Okay.
I've realized that, like through the podcast, the way that you heard about us, I realized like doing that, sharing the story of what I've gone through and my experiences has helped a lot, to promote a healthy like mental health state, because I have different practices, different things that I do to keep myself, in check. But I think the podcast itself is, I'm putting things out there that I want to put out there that I feel brings some resolve, to situations of my past and whatnot. So that's,
Definitely.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I'm actually an artist also, and that all came about through my use of psychedelics as well. And kind of the same way, just showing, kind of being an example to other people that might be going through similar stuff that it sounds like you and I have had similar experiences. It's so hard in the moment when you're battling addiction or depression, and you just feel like there's nobody else in the world that could possibly have gone through this. And it's just fascinating that a lot of the resources to help people are not always the best ones. For example, it started with depression that led into addiction. Um, I had got out of college and I was drinking far too much. And I kind of just quit because it was all social. And that led into a really weird depression for quite some time. I did, I think, 4 different antidepressants, and just none of them work. I mean, really, if you want to be like at a 5 or 6 as far as emotional scale and never go up and never go down, they're great if you just want to do that. But if you want to experience life, they're not a good solution. Now, I'm not saying that they don't work fantastic for some people, because I have a family member friend that has been on, I think it's Prozac for like 30 years and swears it's the greatest thing ever. And I'm all for that. Like, try whatever's going to work for you. Just for me, it didn't. And I had started my psychedelic journey in college. I grew mushrooms. I didn't have any friends that I was in a fraternity and everybody was into drinking and Adderall and stuff like that. I didn't have stoner friends. I didn't have access to mushrooms. And I had decided, hey, why not? Let's grow them. So I did. And a couple of my friends had them, and that was more my casual entry, because if it was more just fun, make some mushroom tea, go out and hang out outside and stuff like that. Nothing really soul searching or anything like that. When the antidepressants I was kind of at that wit's end. I actually stumbled into research chemicals, and I stumbled in on the wrong end first. I kind of found stimulants. I'm not sure. Are you familiar with research chemicals?
So not really. I never really got into the research chemicals. I'm very adept in pharmaceuticals. My dad is a MD psychiatrist, so
Okay.
my whole life I've been learning, and I've also had a very I've had quite an interest in all mind altering substances. But for me, I was struggled with real drug addiction for a long, like real hard drug addiction for a long time. And I always stayed away from psychedelics. I think I knew that they had some real potential, and that scared me.
Yeah.
So when I finally got into the psychedelic realm, so to speak, I never got into research chemicals, because one of my things about the classic psychedelics, the serotonergic psychedelics, is that they're natural, like organic compounds that are generally pretty healthy physiologically.
Totally.
So, but I want to hear more about research chemicals, because I still have a huge interest in them. Not that I'd ever want to do them, but I'm very curious about them. And I know, like you just said, Alexander Shulgin wrote a whole book on like 2 books with his wife on the subject. Yeah. So
Yeah, so I'll start with kind of the back end way how I got into the research chemical psychedelics. Now, primarily now, if I'm going to trip, it's mushrooms. I'm very similar with you, that I think they're the safest way to go. Mushrooms or DMT or peyote, San Pedro, whatever you want to use for your mescaline.
Right.
I think that they naturally produce it, and the sometimes offsetting feelings are part of the experience. One of the things, and I'll be talking a little bit in circles here, but one of the things that is so easy about research chemicals, there's like no body load. Like they're so like it's like if I don't even know how to describe it. It's like somebody found mushrooms and then they were like, that, I mean, literally Shulgin pretty much did this. He basically wanted to alter them so they were like a perfect experience. Or he was very big into the psychology side. His wife was a psychologist. So he was trying to find a perfect therapy drug, which is crazy. He's considered the father of MDMA. I don't think he discovered it, but he was one of the big people that pushed it into the realm of psychiatry. And it's crazy now that MAPS is even getting stage 3 trial approval and things like that. That's awesome. Sorry, back to.
I'm curious, like what your thoughts are on that, about MDMA. I mean, if you have any, it is pretty awesome that they are going ahead in stage 3 phases on with MDMA. It's not an organic natural compound. It's a research chemical, right? But it's proven time and time again that, through their studies, that it's helping people. So personally, like I'm not against it, but I've done it, but I'm not against it, but I'm not like, it's not one that I would naturally look to as a psychedelic.
Correct. And I would agree with that. I think they looked at MDMA and saw it to be the door to allowing all of these chemicals, because John Hopkins is doing psilocybin studies, MAPS is doing psilocybin studies, UCLA is doing psilocybin studies. Like they basically they needed to find a wedge to open that door. And I think the results from MDMA are undeniable, especially with PTSD. And they said, if we can get everybody to realize that drugs are just chemicals and they're not necessarily good or bad, but the environment you do them in can change all of that. And I think they thought that MDMA was the way to crack open that door. And I think, in all honesty, it's working, because there's actually, I just read about, I want to say, it's one of the big medical schools in New York is about to start an LSD study, which is like unheard of, like, because of that was the big thing that made the government drop the hammer. So it's like it's worked. Sure, it's taken, I think MAPS has been doing MDMA for like 12 years. It's been a long road, but I respect them knowing how to play the game with the government to allow them to open the door for everything. Do I think MDMA is the best source of mental health help? I don't think so, but I think it's way lighter. I've only done it maybe 3 or 4 times. I'm way more versed in psychedelics, but it's so, like, you get real lovey and can be open.
Yeah.
Don't get the mind collapsing on itself kind of thing. Like, you don't. So for somebody with trauma, like veterans, where the last thing you want is just to drop their mind on themselves, I think it's a really good tool to allow them to open up about some of the things that were so bad for them. And
so it's a really good point.
Yeah. So I'm all for that, because I'm somebody, I respect anybody that finds a better way to do what we're already doing. And I think psychedelics need to get back into psychology. And I think MAPS found the best way to do it. They were like, let's not even start with a conventional psychedelic, something that's just mildly, I've never really had any like visuals or anything like that on, but my experience is very limited. but I just applaud somebody that knew, that had the long game in mind at the whole time. If you ever listen to what's the guy, the maps guy, the
Rick Doblin.
Yeah, he's looking 50 years ahead. Like the whole time, he always has been. And I'm somebody that even if I'm doing a painting that's going to take me 3 months, it's hard to keep that end goal in mind, to keep working on it. So I applaud his discipline and the people that he built in at Maps to do that. I think it was a smart way to go about that. But yes, I think for more deeper mental health issues, not that PTSD is not deep, but like more personal, I think that's where psychedelics have that better resource to really deeply look inside of you.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think it's great.
Me too.
But back to the research chemicals. So I'd been pretty depressed, and I had found out about them through a friend that actually was a cocaine dealer. And cocaine was just way too expensive for me. I had done it a couple of times, but it's just outrageous. And I had found a research chemical called ethyl hexadrone, which is basically, it's a fast acting stimulant similar to cocaine. The only difference is you can get it mass produced from China. So you could buy something like 25 grams of it for like $100. And this was back, probably about 10 years ago now. I don't think you can legally even get it. Not that research chemicals were ever legal, but literally they would ship 25 grams to your doorstep. And that's where I really started to have a stimulant problem, because it's so cheap to get a lot of it and it's fast acting. You can just, and the weird thing is there's not really a ceiling. So you could go, it was terrible. It was absolutely horrible. It controlled my life. It was one of those things that I was going into work and every hour going to the bathroom to take another bump just to get through the day, because if I didn't sleep at all, because I stayed up playing video games just so that I could keep, it's a whole circle. It's just absolutely devastating to have access to that much stuff for that cheap.
Yeah. And research chemicals are just like molecules that are tweaked in little ways that get around the law or whatever, or make them research chemicals. And okay.
Yeah. And really the really horrible thing, and I will say I still have lasting anxiety that I think came from that, is you're the guinea pig when you're taking these. Like something like cocaine, I'm not going to say it's safe, but there have been millions of people for hundreds of years doing cocaine. And unless you go extreme end of that, you can be okay. Basically, I was taking a chemical, just 5 grams a week led to 25 grams every 2 weeks, like that nobody else had ever taken. And I can't say nobody, because of obviously supply and demand, they're making this for other people. But I'm probably, if you walk down the street and asked anybody what's ethyl hexadrone, or we called it Hex-N, nobody's going to have any idea what that is, and nobody's going to want to put it in their body. But I had done all the research that I thought was needed to safely do it. And was I doing it safely? Oh, absolutely not. It was horrible. The nice thing that segued into was I was married at the time. Thank God I have my wife. I was very good at hiding it. She's very aware of it now, but I was really good at hiding it, but she always knew something was going on. And thankfully she stood by me through the whole thing. And it really solidified our relationship. But once I decided, you know what, this is going to kill you. If you keep this up, this is going to kill you. I stopped. And after that was probably 3 years on and off, just constantly doing it. And your brain just hates you at that point. Like it's depleted of all, it's mostly a dopamine drug. It has nothing has any joy to you other than that drug. it takes over everything. And when you just abruptly stop, it was bad. I mean, it's not like heroin withdrawals. I've never done heroin, but I've seen people withdrawing from heroin. It's nothing like that. But it was like I slept for a week, literally 3 days after I stopped. I literally didn't wake up for a week. Like I would wake up to get a glass of water or maybe a cracker or two, whatever. I couldn't eat. It was horrible. But the nice thing was the site that I was buying that from also had like 15 of Shulgin's research chemicals. So I was like, well, those psychedelics, those mushrooms I did in college, those were pretty cool. Let's check these out. And that's when I really started to deep dive in to my own psyche of what I wanted in life and things like that. And I think I have a list. I've taken like 22 different, other than the classics. I've done DMT, mescaline, San Pedro, mushrooms. I did LSA, which is Hawaiian baby. That's terrible. Don't do that. Those are so bad on your stomach. But I've done all of that, and then I've done 22 of the research chemicals that Shulgin has done. So everything. So the main chemical, so psilocybin in mushrooms is 4-HO-DMT. So you start adjusting that molecule. So the next one is 4-HO-DET, then MET. And basically each one, if you were to give me one now, and again, I'm not sure if I would take it anymore, but they're not unique enough to be like, oh, that's this one. And there are some that like, so there's one 4-HO-MIPT, which visuals are like, everything turns into a Picasso painting. Like it's so, and every time I took it, it was like that. But other than that, a lot of them are just slight variations to the mushroom molecule. So it's very similar to whatever its parent chemical is. But like I said, the reason I went away from those is because of like the stomach ache that some people get from mushrooms, or I definitely get from peyote, things like that. Or from ayahuasca, that's all very part of the experience. Most people that I know that have done ayahuasca, and it's not that many, but most agree that like it's awful throwing up and shitting at the same time. It's just horrible, but it's part of the experience, and it wouldn't be that experience if that didn't happen. Now, if somebody was going to try for the first time, I would not recommend ayahuasca. I'd say here are some mushrooms, but I think that's all part of your body basically taking care of itself. I think a lot of people don't give credit for how good our body and mind is at knowing exactly what it needs to do. But yeah, so about 3 years ago, I kind of was doing that, coming off of that tripping every 2 weeks, and I had found a counselor that I went and saw, and then I found art, and basically my whole life since then has just been pretty much transformed. I wake up enjoying life every day. Everybody's going to have bad days, but my life is in so much better of a place. I was behind on my mortgage payments on the house that I just now sold to buy a new house back when I was on Hexen. And it's like that type of shift is just so amazing to me. And I credit it. Don't get me wrong, going to see and talk to a counselor is also important. But one thing I will say, when I went in for the first time, I just like laid all of my issues out and was like, here's everything that's fucked up with me. Sorry. I don't know if it's language.
It's fine.
Everything is just a mess. Here's all these problems. Well, like 6 months in, when I'm like getting everything straightened out and I'm ready to stop seeing her so often, I was going like every 2 weeks. She had said, I've never seen someone that knew everything they needed to work on, but just needed help working on it. And I was like, literally, it was all of the mushroom trips were just, it puts it right in your face. here's here's where here's where you need to put in some effort, and here are things that you need to work on. And sometimes I wasn't in a good enough space to know what to do, so that's why I would bring those things to her, and then she would very well. She said she's been seeing some patients 15 years that won't admit X problem that they came in day one on, and they're still seeing her, not understanding why they still have all these issues. And she wasn't saying, she obviously gets paid to go see them, so she's not like that's a bad thing, but she said she's never seen somebody that's just like, I'm a broken mess, here's every broken piece of me, how do I put this back together? And I've always taken that as like a pat myself on the back moment.
Definitely.
Like,
as
you really did work your stuff out.
As you should. And I think it's interesting that you said that, because what you just said, people going to therapy, having an issue, and 15 years later, still not attacking that issue. That was me for 10 years. I was 18, maybe 17 when I went to see my first therapist, and didn't, a few months with that one didn't work out, a year with another one. So I searched around for different therapists, but 10 years, nothing changed. I had a ayahuasca experience, and since then I've had a therapist that I've gotten so much more done with, in a little over a year. So much more than I had in the past 10 years. That's
awesome.
And like you said, I like how you said with the mushrooms, how they lay everything out in front of you. I really haven't done a lot of mushrooms. In high school I did a little bit, but I did do a high dose earlier this year, and it was literally like, that's exactly the best way to say it, because all these repressed memories and feelings and emotions and just all this stuff that's like been repressed in my psyche, like 100% was just shown to me, like almost like it was like a movie reel just being shown to me. And it's scary, man, because it's a high dose. Like you said, there's a body load to mushrooms, so you're not in your like normal, like sober environment. But luckily, if you do it in a safe place, like where I did it in my bedroom with the lights off and no sound, trying to go that route because I've been told that's the way to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, I applaud you for. That's amazing. Like that you've seen these things through, like you said, through the psychedelics, and that they're issues, they're there. Like that enough is hard work. But then capitalizing on that and actually making changes and telling people about that is really, to me, is even harder work, because that's when you really have to put in like all that effort to make the changes.
Totally. And you're always, there will always be things in your life to work on. I'm somebody that thinks that you're basically, when you're born, you're a giant block of clay, and some things break away more than others. But when you become an adult, and this is very artsy of me because that's just how my mind works now. Once you become an adult, you get to look at the block of clay, what's there, and you get to decide how to chisel the rest of it. Because the world, until, to me, 22, 23, the world's happening to you. You're just this active participant, but you're not really steering the ship. And then around that time, and I'm only 30, so it's not like I'm so far beyond that, but I would say that's when you can no longer say, oh, I'm this way because so-and-so treated me like that when I was a kid. Because now it's your responsibility to not reciprocate that problem. And it was very hard. I have two very Catholic parents, and opening up to them was when I was finally able to kind of share this experience with everyone, because that was the hardest kind of hurdle, because all drugs are bad, but Catholics like to drink, and it's like, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't make sense. But like you said, figuring out the problems are there, capitalizing on them, that's all in you. And that's, for me, it was very hard, but once I knew what I was doing, it became easier. Then once I was like, finally, I always call it, because of like me, my art's very psychedelic. I'll send you my Instagram and you can kind of look at it. And I needed to come out to the world as the new person that I was. And that was so terrifying. But now I understand. I've never been anti-gay, but I never really understood like the weight that was lifted when someone that is gay comes out. And I cannot fathom. I'm so empathetic for people that are in the closet about anything. I don't think coming out is an exclusively gay thing. It's finally figuring out who you are and telling the world, this is who I am now, not who you think I am.
Absolutely.
It's so hard when there are people around you that nothing you can say will make them understand.
Right. Because of past behaviors and
exactly.
Like,
and to be able to go, I don't care that they don't understand, is so important.
oh
Because
yeah.
me and my parents have a very good relationship now, but they've never known anyone that ever did mushrooms before. So to try to explain that experience and how it led me to go to therapy, and they love that I'm happy now. They love who I've become.
Yeah, I wanted to ask. Sorry, I wanted
No.
to ask. I wanted to ask you, like, when did that transformation start? Like, when you started to realize, okay, I've had all these experiences, and now it's time to like make changes. Like, how long ago was that for you?
So that was all of the experiences, that was probably about 3.5 years ago. And that's when I started seeking therapy. Was about 3.5 years ago. And it was probably a year of therapy. So about 2.5 years ago that I was finally like 100% comfortable with who I am and what I've become and what those experiences led to me, that I kind of opened up to the world as that person. It still is. It's very interesting because of it is still so recent that some people, they're projecting the old me, so they don't even, it's almost like they don't even see the changes you've made because they're not ready to accept it yet. And I think 8-10 years down the road, that won't be an issue anymore, because people will be like, well, there's no perception that I have of David is going to change him. But I do have some friends that still will text me, oh man, going out to the bars tonight, you want to come? Like, you want to come? And I have no interest in just sitting at a bar and drinking anymore.
Right.
Like, and don't get me wrong, every once in a while I'll have a beer or two. It's not like I'm anti-alcohol.
Right.
I don't drink just to drink, because I'm living life and I have experiences that I want to have and art that I want to create and things like that. And it's so weird that after 50 times of them texting me, they want old David back. They're not looking at me for who I am. They want the other person back.
Yeah.
And it doesn't impact me. I'm still their friend. I still stay in touch with people like that. But you can't let other people's projections change who you are once you know that's who I am.
Yeah. And I think I have similar experiences, and I think at this point it's almost like a realization, like they want me to be a certain, or you to be a certain way for their need, for something that they are looking for. And
exactly,
that's to be respected, but it doesn't mean that you have to be that for another person. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, totally. I was having a conversation the other day with a really good friend of mine it's so funny. He's straight edge. He doesn't do anything, never done psychedelics, really good head on his shoulders, but loves like old psychedelic rock. And he has like, his mom does psychedelic painting and she's straight edge. It's so cool to me because I can have conversations. He's so open-minded. And I was talking to him and I said, one of the hardest things to do when other people want you, like you said, to be a certain way for them, one of the hardest things to do is be a good example by trying to nicely let them know you can't be that for them and they need to fill that gap themselves. Like one of my favorite analogies to try to explain that is, you know how when you're on an airplane and they say, when the mask comes down, secure the mask to your face before, if you have a child, secure the mask to your face before you secure your child's mask, because you can't save your child if you're going to die. Essentially is the way that's the way I feel your mental health is. Take care. Don't let other people fill that for you. Take care of yourself, because that's the only way you can help other people take care of themselves. There are so many people that I've met that are just a wreck in one area of their life and they won't recognize it. And then they go try to help people and all they do is cause more problems. Like there's a song that goes, hurt people. And I think that's such a powerful message, that if you're hurt, fix that first before you go try to work on anybody else or anything else. And so many people don't realize that. So many people bury their hurt so deep down, and then they go try to fix situations and they just hurt people more and cause more problems. And it's
Right.
Really the best way is take care of yourself first. Go ahead.
Right, exactly. The best way to help other people is to help yourself.
Exactly.
I never realized that. It's been a long time. I have this year only. I've only been clean from opiates this year. I had a
really
so I had a 10-year long addiction. Before that, I was doing other drugs, in high school, and so I'm 28. So when I was 18, I did like opiates, heroin for the first time, and never really looked back. Although it was a progression, like over the years got much worse. It wasn't like a linear progression where it got a little bit worse each year. It got like exponentially worse as the time went on. But this year I had November of 2019, I had an ayahuasca experience. And from that day on, and I was using every single day before that, from that day on, I stopped using. But I was still on methadone. And so I had to get off the methadone. I was on a high dose. So I got down to 1 milligram, which is, from a high dose down to 1 milligram, very short, like 2 months.
Yeah.
Which is very, very short. Like medically, the way that they run it should be way longer than that. But I got down to 1 milligram. I relapsed. I overdosed.
Wow.
And the day that I overdosed, I woke up, from the overdose, and I was like, I need to go to rehab. And I've never said that before. Every time I've been to rehab in the past was other people trying to say you need to go to rehab. But I was like, look, I had this ayahuasca experience that can be like, I can use that experience to guide the rest of my life. I truly believe that. I mean, it's helped me thus far. But my point is, like, I overdosed. I woke up. I said, I need to go to rehab. I went to rehab, got off the methadone. I haven't touched an opiate since. And since then, it's been about 9 months. So
that's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, every day. And again, stimulants are a whole nother ball game. They're a lot easier to get off than opiates.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm not going to say that, because I've seen people go through stimulant withdrawals that is very, like, I sympathize for it. So
yeah. And I apologize. For me, it was easier to stop. And again, it could be because of the chemical I was taking. I don't have any idea, but 9 months is huge. Every day that you're taking a step in the right direction is a positive. And even you could have the worst possible day ever, but if you don't touch an opiate that day, you got to go to bed going, yes, I did it. I know today sucked. It was horrible. It all sucked, but I did it. And that was one of the things that one of my ways to get over some of my stuff was right before I went to bed, finding that silver lining on every day, whether it was, I didn't get the work I wanted done at work today, but when I came home, I cooked for my wife. And you know what? She really appreciated that, because then she didn't have to do it. Boom, silver lining. Or maybe it was, you know what? I did go to McDonald's today for lunch. I did go to McDonald's today for dinner, but I took my dogs for a walk. And you have to find those little things and hang on to those. And the more you do that, they become bigger and they'll just wash out a lot of the other stuff. And don't get me wrong, like I said, I still have bad days, I still have issues and things like that. And but they're always a bad day now. On a bad day when I was on stimulants or things like that was 100. It was always the worst day. And now a bad day now is like maybe a 30, like on a 1 to 100 scale. And it's crazy that my mind still thinks of it equally as bad, but I know if I take a step back, I'm like, whoa, that's nothing like what I used to have. Like, and that's really cool, because of then I feel like I still continue wanting to work on myself, no matter how far in the past some of these things are. It's good that I always continue to see both sides, the good to keep going forward, and the bad to realize what you need to work on.
Yeah, I think personally, I think I'm pretty good at seeing silver linings. Maybe that's, synchronicities and stuff. Like maybe that's our mind. Some people will make the argument, well, that's just your mind looking for those things. And, I don't want to argue with certain people that feel that way.
Yeah.
It could be true, but it doesn't matter because it's helping me.
Totally. And that, go ahead.
Well, and then I was just going to, so yeah, silver linings is huge. And I don't even know. You go ahead. You were going to say something.
No, I was going to say that people always want to tell you things because they don't want to try and do it themselves a lot of times. Like, I had other friends that had other substance issues and things like that. And when I started to work on myself to get past that, they were always the ones to be like, to bring up things like that. Like, oh, why are you looking for a silver lining? It still sucks. You're going out of your way to try to make it better. And that was their way of trying to pull you back into the substance abuse and things like that. And it's like, no, it's what I need to do to get better.
Right. But they're probably not even, I would imagine they're not even like fully conscious that they're trying to pull you back.
Totally. Yeah. No, I 100% agree. And I think there are so many people that have so many unconscious behaviors that they don't realize they're doing. And that's one of the reasons things like this podcast are so great, because of then maybe even if it's one out of every 1,000 people that you get to go, oh, wait, maybe I am doing things unconsciously that I didn't realize were harmful to me or the people around me. And I mean, that's the more people that seek help or try to help themselves, the better the planet will be.
Yeah. And the other thing I was going to say was, like we talked about, like people from our past, seeing us in one way and just seeing us as that is, I know I had that person figured out basically.
Yeah.
That is something that I struggle with now, because I had a lot of, negative behaviors that affected a lot of people, more people than I was, like, even right now I'm willing to admit, I'm sure, but I'm able to admit it now. In the past I wasn't able to. But my point is, like, there's so many people that see you in a certain light or see me in a certain light. And so, like, I'm like, well, what can I do? The basic number one thing I can do is try to just better myself. And by bettering myself and just being, at least I'm not doing those negative behaviors anymore.
Yeah.
Over time, it's been 9 months now that I've been sober, and I may not give myself enough credit, but looking back from where I am now to where I was before, it's like, there's like no words for the difference that I see, that other people see from me. And that's an exciting idea to me, because it's only been 9 months. I still have my whole life, like that's what
Totally.
that's the whole thing was like. I was 28 and I was killing myself with heroin. I wanted to die. Then I have this ayahuasca experience, and now it's like, shit, man, I have a whole life. And it's like that, and that was scary and intimidating, and it still is, but it's becoming less and less that way, because I'm able to see like how much I've grown just in 9 months. It's such a short time,
Totally. I 100% get that. I say all the time, to my wife, I'll go down and I'll paint, and maybe I'll be working on a painting for a week, and I'll come up and I'll be like, this is the best thing I've done. I can't wait to see what I do in 10 years.
Yeah.
Because of every day you work on something, you get better at it. And working on yourself is that, how I said, where you're chiseling that sculpture. I want to be that person that dies, that somebody's like, so many people are like, man, I wish I was as happy as that dude, or I wish I was as content as that dude. Because of like a lot of people's negative view on the world comes from them not getting content with where they're at. Like, I'm in Missouri and I do this crazy art that almost, I don't know, let's say Missouri's a very conservative state. I don't know if you know that or not. Let's say 1 out of every 1,000 or 2,000 people even understands where I'm coming from or the emotion I'm trying to convey. Basically, I sell a piece maybe once every 2 months. And at first I was like, man, if I wasn't married and I moved to LA and all this stuff, like I could really make something out of this. And then I was like, no, I love my wife. I love my house. I love what I'm doing. I have another job. I don't have to sell my art for it to still be a valuable part of my life. And so many people get stuck in the first part of that. Well, if I didn't have a wife, if I didn't have a house, if I moved to LA, it would all just magically be better.
Right.
Really, I have friends that live in California that literally, like, they're living in a Cracker Jack box, paying 5 times the amount for rent that I'm paying for a house payment, and they're not making it big or anything like that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I hear that. It's like people want to jump from 0 to a million just because they have an idea that they could, or they think they could.
Yeah.
I actually have more respect for someone like you who does what you do rather than the alternative where you would move out to LA. Not that I don't have respect for people like that. It's just, there's other ways to live. You know what I mean?
Totally.
I guess another thing I wanted to say is, like, you see, like, I don't know what kind of music you listen to, but you know about like these rock star hip hop rappers who have, all this money, and they show it off like they've got this and that. And sure, they do. They have a lot of money. They have a lot of material wealth, and maybe they're very happy. I don't know. I'm not really thinking of any specific one. What I think of is, like, I think every human being, in my opinion, and this could be my crazy mind, but I think every human being has the potential to be like that. I think honestly what happens is people like you and I and just normal everyday people, like citizens, don't really want that. Like they convince,
Totally.
I think they convince themselves that's what I want. Look at that. But I don't think they really truly want that, because
because they would go get it if they actually wanted that.
Yeah.
I'm with you there. I think every person has virtually the same potential.
Yeah.
We just all choose where we're going to exert that.
Yeah. And the other thing is, I think, like, people want the idea of a person that they can look up to and be like, I want to be like him, because it takes more responsibility off the person, the individual citizen. So it's like, they think they got there easy. Actually, it's probably a ton of hard work that rapper or whatever got to get there. But like us, where we are, it's like we want that, because that's like I think we like know we could have that, but like we don't really want to be that.
Totally. Well, and like you said, with hard work, you're just the vast amount of hard work it takes to create something new that's popular enough to get there takes discipline like no other most of the time.
Most of the time, yeah.
YouTube series called Off Camera. And I forget the name of the host, but basically he has movie stars come in most of the time, and they just talk about like the crappy time before they got big. And you watch maybe 5 of those and you'll be like, there is no way I would have put up with that. Like, these are people that like now are super wealthy. I think Ben Affleck is on there, and he's talking about having to apply for food stamps because he hasn't got an acting gig, like, and things like that. And there's so many people don't think about stooping that low for your dream. Most people would be like, no, I'm going to get a job at McDonald's so I don't, or
Yeah.
whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
most people don't want to put in the drastic amount of effort that it takes to get to where most of these people that they idolize are.
Right. But somehow,
Go ahead.
somehow people are still convinced that they could have it if they worked hard enough, or that they don't have to work very hard, and then they get upset at like these celebrities who have all this money. Like, I know there's issues with that, I think, but I don't think it's the celebrity itself's issue. I think it's like we are part of that. We are contributing to that. If it wasn't for the fans, like for us, for the citizens, they wouldn't be on the platform they're on.
Totally. I mean, the reason they're popular is because they're a puppet of what we want, essentially. Kind of like we were talking about a friend that projects and only sees you in one way. Can you imagine having 100 million fans that think they know you, even though none of them have ever met you? You're essentially their puppet, and that on the psyche must be insanely difficult to deal with. That's
Yeah.
why so many of them fall into really bad habits, is
Yeah.
because of it's hard enough for me to just go, I know who I am, and ignore what everybody else projects me to be.
Yeah.
But when your job is literally pleasing people, you can't ignore that. So you have to listen to all of it. And
Exactly.
even if you're big enough to ignore like comment sections, you're still having to do things in a way that will be received well. So you might write a song and you might have, I don't know, I'm big into music, but I don't play. You might write this super complex guitar riff that's just crazy. And John Mayer has an interview where he's talking about, he can write these things that he basically is like, I could make Mozart jealous, but when I put that out, nobody likes it. So I have to do these dumb 4-chord things. And he's like, it sucks because for me to do my job, I'm getting so good at my art that I can't use my art to make money anymore. I have to stoop it down to everybody else's level, essentially. And that's exactly what we're talking about, where it's like,
Yeah.
would that really be fun to you? And I'm sure, don't get me wrong, people like that are making enough money that they still have plenty of time to do what they want. But to do that, you have to be doing that from the start, making things that people want. And that's probably the hardest part, because I do a lot of very abstract stuff. And so many times I hear, I just don't get it. And it's like, that's fine, but that's why I don't make a bunch of money off my art, is because of not everybody's going to get it. So
Yeah, I think that just brings it full circle to the point that we made in the beginning, is that like people convince themselves they want to be like a certain artist in a certain genre of certain type of art, but in reality, I don't think, if they really did, they would. You know what I mean? Like, I don't
totally.
think it's like a paradox in a way, because it's like, oh, I look up to this artist, I want to be like them, but like, no, maybe they're just showing characteristics that I value that are similar to me, and that's why I value them so much. You know what I mean? And plus, they're on a super public platform, so it's so easily accessible. You know what I mean? So then we could just hype it up even more.
Totally. And I think, and I don't want to go too deep down this rabbit hole, because my mind would give all kinds of crazy ideas and people be like, this dude's nuts. But as somebody that grew up in a very Catholic family and now is no longer, I wouldn't consider myself Christian. I'm a very spiritual person, but I have my own type of spirituality. But I think less people, as the population grow up having like a religion. And religion is such a good, as someone that's not very religious, religion is very good at structuring people to look up to. In Christianity, for example, Jesus. So rather than having rock star Jim Smith be your idol, you get to idolize someone that's perfect. And then you grow up in that manner, and that is very good. And I think less people are, not that I don't want to say anything too deep. Not that I'm saying that people should all of a sudden be religious again. You just need to find better people to idolize.
Definitely.
People in your own life, like your parents, and that goes back to the setting a good example. Once you take care of yourself, you can help people. You can be that thing that other people look up to, even though you might not even know it. I might have, I don't know, a high school friend that follows me on Facebook that every day is like, man, he's painting again. That's awesome. Like, and then all of a sudden there's someone they can relate to rather than someone that's on TV and you go to their show and things like that. And you just see the certain aspects of them that, like you said, it goes very full circle. The people you or I should be the people that people look up to, not necessarily the rock stars and things like that.
Right.
A lot of times they're young also, like, and back to my 20, it's saying you're just a part of the world until like 23, 24. Most of these people haven't self-reflected yet. And they might be so many people I've heard so many times, man, I just wish he was like his old album, or I wish they were like that. It's because they self-reflected and were like, this is crap. Why am I playing this garbage music? And they'll change directions and people will just understand that.
People don't like growth to see growth in certain people. But when you're talking about religion, I think that's something that I think it's good to talk about. That I think religion is a good thing to talk about. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I don't think religion. There's certain things about religion that I really, really don't like. Like this conformity, this dogmatic way about it. But I think at the base of most religions, like, is some very good values and principles. So for people to go, oh well, I didn't like growing up Catholic or Christian or whatever, so I'm gonna throw out religion altogether. I mean, I think religion is an ambiguous term. I think everybody has some form of religion within themselves. Like you said, spirituality.
Yeah.
Right.
I would say religion is the very structured, but I think you're right. I think everybody deep down has some type of spirituality.
Right. So, yeah. And I think, I don't mean to speculate on it too much, but I think, I've heard like Jesus himself I don't think he was like a religious person. I think he was kind of the opposite. I think he was trying to show people like, look, you don't have to conform to the Roman Empire or whatever.
Totally.
It was.
Well, yeah, I completely agree. And I think so many people don't see that. So many people that, because of, when I really like got all my stuff together, I started trying to find friends in areas that would challenge me. And I have a really good friend that's Muslim, and he's very hardcore Muslim. And I wanted to learn about Islam. So I hung out with him and talked to him and all this stuff. And it was so crazy. The way he talks about Muhammad is the same way people talk about Jesus or Abraham if you're Jewish. And it's so crazy that they can think they're so drastically different when, if you just boil them down, they're all the same thing. They're that person that is a good example to try and follow.
Yeah.
And really, I don't think you need to, not that church doesn't give a good sense of community, but like you said, that leads to people trying to conform. I think you can have that spirituality and looking up to someone who has good values, but not enough people have their own good values. So they go to church so that their kids can look up to Jesus rather than themselves per se. This whole idea has been really fresh in my mind. Me and my wife are trying to have a kid, and she grew up Lutheran and I grew up Catholic, and I'm no longer. And she's like, she'd go if her parents asked her or something, but she doesn't go. And we kind of were discussing all the different options and things like that. And it basically came down to, if we think we've got our shit together, we don't have to. Now, if our kid at 6 is like, Dad, I want to go to church, of course, I'm not going to refuse my kid that. But at the same time, I think a lot of people don't want to put in the actual effort of teaching their child how what a good way to live life is. So they go to church and just let church teach them. You know what I'm saying? And
I do. I think the as a parent, I'm not a parent, but I could imagine as a parent that would feel almost like a tremendous amount of weight and pressure and responsibility on, okay, what is the right way to be? Because who knows, in a way. I mean,
exactly,
we
totally.
all, like, that's where the idea of Jesus comes from. It's like that's what we want to be like.
Yeah.
But we don't have a lot, like, it's hard even people that are born, Catholic Christian today don't have a direct, it's such a like, Jesus from such a long time ago, it's such a far removed idea of like who this person was. And
Totally.
then they say, oh, he performed these miracles, and it's like, well, why tell me that? It's not going to help me. Like, I'm supposed to be like someone that isn't human, basically. Like, I'm a human.
Yeah.
I want to be like someone that's human. But yeah, that's
Totally. Yeah. And I'm somebody that when I kind of fell away from my Catholic roots, I fell into Buddhism and meditation. And I very quickly was like, on the surface level, I still meditate frequently, but I do like mindfulness meditation. It's not like a religious meditation, because of just in the same way as East or as Western religion, Eastern religion gets super dogmatic also. Like, as soon as like I went to like this meditation like outing in my city, and I went and meditated, and you like meditated for an hour, and then everybody kind of talked, and like people were like freaked out that I came to a meditation thing just to like sit and meditate just on my own thoughts, and not like be meditating like chants to Buddha and like like all these different things, that which is all okay, but like they were freaked out that somebody could be like just taking the surface level benefits, just like we said with Christianity, just taking those core values. You can be a good person. You don't have to dive into deep, oh, you have to give 10% to the church, oh, you have to go to church every Sunday, oh, you have to do this, oh, you have to do that. And there's so many things that people set on top of the core values that they forget that the core values even existed in the first place. They think it's all one thing.
yeah.
And it's just so much more than that.
Yeah, and so like you were saying earlier, I think there should be more emphasis on looking up to our peers rather than some famous artist or entertainer, really.
Totally.
And like we were talking about, like I really do like the idea of Christianity when it's at the core. I just don't like the religious dogmatic indoctrination that comes along with it, because that's not, in my experience, it doesn't help.
No, and in some cases it makes things a lot worse.
Yeah.
Perfect example in Catholicism, and it's been like this for a very long time. You could, no matter what your sin is, you can go to a priest and sit with him for 15 minutes, and he'll talk to God, and you're forgiven. And literally it's emphasized no matter what your sin is. So you could literally murder someone and go tell a priest, and in their dogma, you're good. You're good. You're good. Have a good day. Have a good one. And I think now legally they would have to go tell someone. I don't think they're allowed to like not tell someone about that. And that's an extreme. But what I'm saying is, like, they don't have to go. Let's say somebody hits their wife and then goes, and then they're forgiven, and then they come home and they wonder, honey, why are you upset? I went to talk to a priest and God forgave me. So why are you like it? A lot of times that dogma becomes part of the problem, because you believe so much in these extra things that you don't realize that you still screwed up. Like, and that's so bizarre to me, that it's just like, oh, well, I'm clean, cool, have a nice day, see you later. Like, and I'm not saying I've not had everybody's circumstances. Let's say that the guy hitting the wife, maybe he has cancer and things are just so impossibly hard for him that he didn't really mean to do it. That I'm not saying that person shouldn't get forgiveness along the way, but you still have to work for it no matter what, and realize you screwed up. It's not, I go talk to somebody, they say, bim, bam, boom, you're good. Like,
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It just goes to show what things were like in the past, you know,
totally. Yeah.
and how things are starting to change. And I think it's really good that we're talking about this because things are changing. People are becoming less dogmatic, religious. But there, like you were saying to begin with, there's something nice about the idea of religion or spirituality. So like, so what is that going to be replaced with? If we lose, if we complete, not that everyone's completely getting rid of religion, but
Yeah.
say, you know, 1,000 years from now we do, well, what's going to be replacing that? There's still got to be, I don't think there has to be, but I think there's a lot of value in, because you can say, oh, well, you can just look at your moral, you can just try to be a good person morally. And it's like, yeah, but there, I don't know. I don't know. There's got to be something. I don't think there has to be, but I think it'd be good if there's something to replace, replace that. That's like, I like the idea of religion because of the idea of like a brotherhood or
Yeah. And I get what you're saying. And I completely agree. I don't think it will ever completely go away because there will always be for somebody like me, especially that grew up literally indoctrinated into a religion. I mean, from day one until I was 18, I went to church every Sunday. I went to a Catholic school from grades kindergarten through eighth grade. Like, I mean, I was somebody that had it everything poured in, and then somebody that dumped it all back out, and then realized that dumping it all everything back out was bad. So I get what you're saying, but that process of dumping it out is so impossibly hard for most people. I don't think it'll ever completely go away.
yeah,
Something else might take its place.
yeah,
It's terrifying when you decide every person in my life has taught me this specific way, and I don't think that's right. I want to find another way. Just to say those thoughts, it used to give me chills because of how scary that is to be like, everybody I've ever met agrees that this is right,
yeah.
and I disagree.
Especially if you grow up in that setting, because then
Totally.
you're attaching like your earliest values and memories and everything to that. I get that too, because you know, I wasn't in Catholic school as much as you, but I did go to a Catholic school for 2 years, and my mom's Irish Catholic, my dad's Christian, you know, and the one thing I can say about that is like when I was younger, I used to think of, if I do this, I'm going to go to hell, or if I do that, I'm going to go to heaven.
100%.
And
Yeah.
it was just like this, it would strike me to the core. Like, I shouldn't do this.
Yeah.
I should do this. I shouldn't, you know, and to this day, it's more evasive now. Like the idea of heaven and hell, like it's not on the forefront of my mind, but it's still in there because I was so young when I learned it, and that I just held on to.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. No, when you said that, it's like, oh yeah. Now, to me though, I've grown into very unique idea set. So I don't, that thought never crosses my mind anymore, but I totally know what you're talking about. Like every decision as a kid was, should I do this? Am I going to go to heaven for doing it, or am I going to go to hell? And then that was your moral compass. And that, I think, in itself could be traumatizing to kids. Like that literally, you're this fresh mind, and you're like, every decision you make could send you to a fiery inferno. Like, what the hell are you, like, if you just walked up to a kid in a non-religious circumstance and said, do you want this sucker? If you take it, you burn in a fiery inferno forever. If you don't, you get to keep going about your day. People would literally call the cops on you for saying something like that.
Yeah, in that
In
context.
a religion sense, it's like, oh no, it's totally cool. We just tell them to go to hell if they make a bad decision. Like, it's like, that's so crazy to me.
Yeah.
That's we allow, and I'm not saying anybody should change the religion. I'm a very passive person. You do whatever you think is best for you.
Yeah, but still always, it's good to search for truth.
Totally. Yeah.
And when you say like that idea of heaven and hell for a kid is traumatizing, that's 100% when I look back, like that's what it feels like. It feels like a trauma that kind of burdened me for a long time. I mean, I'm not trying to persuade anyone. I'm just trying to say, like, that is my experience when I was young.
Yeah.
I felt like that was a very traumatizing thing it was a hurdle I couldn't really get over, and it took me a long time. And just want to put it out there, because that's literally, like, that's my experience. So
Totally. And I think so often people think trauma and they think, like a kid in a car accident that sees his mom and dad die, or a guy in the military that sees his friend's head get blown off, or something like that. And they don't realize that trauma is just anything that puts a dent into your entire thought process. Like, one of my favorite analogies for psychedelics to kind of keep this all together is psychedelics are like your brain is like a hill with snow on it, and you sled down it and you make all these different grooves. And the more you sled down certain grooves, that your sled keeps going. Like, you take 100 kids and have them just start going down, they'll start taking the same paths. And what psychedelics do is they throw down a fresh blanket of snow, and you get to decide, remember, taking that path last time in my mind was a problem. Do I want to continue to take that path? No, then you just go the other way. And one of the best examples I can give that my therapist helped me through a lot, I used to make about 1 billion assumptions in a day. Like, when, I don't know, somebody at the grocery store rammed their cart into mine, I'd be like, this effing asshole, like, blah, blah, blah. And I'd create this structure of a story of the reason they bumped their cart into mine. I didn't think about it from their perspective. And once I started cutting down, basically I'd just label it. That was one of the best things I could do. I would go, oh, there, you just made another assumption. Oh, you just made another assumption. And then your brain just stops doing. It's fascinating when your brain finally goes, well, if he's just going to point it out every time, I'm going to stop doing it. And it's so crazy when you correct a behavior like that. And then you see someone, for me, a relative, my mom does it all the time. And I've pointed it out for her. And she has said in the last like 6 months, she's started to notice it, and it's changed her life. Like, because that fresh blanket of snow gave me the idea, maybe I don't have to make all these assumptions. And also, how much brain power was I wasting making them all? Like, literally, if you are spending valuable brain energy thinking up reasons why somebody else did something to you, when you honestly have no idea, you're just wasting your time and energy. Like,
yeah.
it's so crazy when you free up that energy.
I actually, now that you say that, I see a lot of behaviors that I used to make, previous the psychedelics, or not that I take psychedelics often. I really don't.
Yeah.
I think people hear that and they get an idea. But before I took the psychedelic, I see this now in other people, like people in my family, and I see them react a certain way or behave in a certain manner, and I'm like, that's how I used to be. And like, how do I now, what I'm working on right now, like what I really am curious about is like, how do I show that? Because I've tried to point it out and I've tried to talk about it, but I get a lot of backlash.
So, and I'm no expert. Take all of my advice with a grain of salt, but I find that, again, the lead by example is the only option. Pointing it out sometimes, like in my mom's case, I got a lot of backlash at first, and then she figured it out. But me and my mom have a super close relationship because our brains work very similar. So when she saw positive effects from me changing behaviors, she was more susceptible. However, my dad or my brothers have very different behaviors, and I would never even start to point it out to them because of nothing I could explain would make them understand it. Perfect example is they don't know anything about um, truly like deep levels of psychology, like how the brain operates or things it might do to that have caused habits and things like that. They've lived fairly normal lives. They didn't have addiction or mental health, so they never had to delve into that. So saying, hey, your brain decided to do this and you can choose not to wouldn't make any sense to them because they'd be like, what do you mean? Because they're on default. They're just, when X happens, I react Y. When Y happens, I react X. And that's just how there is no proactive thinking about anything. And I think that even though me trying to be a good example might not ever change anything they do, I did my best without burning a bridge. And I'm not saying that when you try to show someone a flaw and they have no idea it's there, defense is the only option they're going to have.
I see that quite apparent in behaviors with people in my life. But yeah, I've my whole family studied psychology, and so like I have a firm grip on a decent amount of psychology. And but it's also interesting that psychology and psychedelics kind of work together, because I've always had an understanding of psychology, but to have the psychedelic was putting a new perspective on things. And then it really not only conceptualized it, not only that I understand these habits and forms of psychology conceptually, I started to actually realize them, actualize them, and start to understand, okay, now I not only do I know what the definitions of these terms mean, but now I can actually see in my own life. Like something I used to do when I was using was I would project my stuff on other people, and they would call me out for it. But in my mind, it was real. Like the projections I was putting on my brother or my sister, my family or friend, in my mind, it was the truth. But it wasn't an objective truth. It was my mind. It was my opinion, but I couldn't see that. That's a small example. There's many other examples, but of like different psychological behaviors and stuff. But my point is like, since getting clean and the psychedelic, really, not to put too much emphasis on that, but that is really what allowed me to take a step back. It's almost like it filled up my capacity for life. Really, I could start to be like, okay, I'm not what I thought I was. I do have a lot of deficits in my behaviors, and yeah, I just, so it's cool. Like we should, I think we should wrap it up, but I want to keep talking a little bit. But also at the end, I was thinking maybe we didn't do an introduction, so maybe we should stop recording at some point and do that.
That's fine. I'm good with that. Yeah. No, I've had a blast talking to you, and I think it's great that you're doing this to get the word out, and anything that I can do to help, just let me know, because I'm all for it. And I think it's necessary there, because there are a lot of outlets that people that are in psychedelics can use to understand how good John Hopkins and MAPS and all them are doing, but there aren't enough reference points for a casual person.
Yeah.
I think something like this is a way that somebody could get into that.
Yeah, a lot of people would consider what's the term for like a success story, but it's not like a clinically studied. It's a
oh my gosh, I'm trying to, I know what you're trying to say, but like
you know what word I'm looking for. It's
like an antidote.
Yeah, it's okay. There we go. Okay.
Yeah.
So like what we're doing, like we have our own anecdotal experiences, and people in science would say that doesn't matter because we can't scientifically calculate it. But that's that takes away such a personal aspect and such a like a personable aspect, in my opinion. I think this is what is needed. Like you talked about coming out of the closet earlier, like
Yeah.
in the psychedelic realm, or just like a transformed person. That's kind of like what this is. Like I've done this with a few other people, and you know, that's kind of like the gist of it. It's like we are going to be the people that are going to explain like what's going on in our lives. Hopefully, you know, people pick it up and listen to it and watch it, and the only reason I want that is so that they can relate to it and that they can maybe get something from it.
Yeah.
But um and I think anecdotal experience is extremely important because I think other people can relate to it.
Totally. Yeah, I completely agree. I think a lot of times science tries to define everything, and I don't think everything in the human condition is definable.
Oh,
And
I don't think it ever will
psychedelics are
be.
one of those things that even the hardcore people doing deep research will agree it's so hard to put a definition on it, and that's why they have to, like, one of the things they're using psilocybin for is quitting smoking, and they have to have that because if the person quits smoking, they can attach that to the experience. There's data there, but they have no way of explaining the actual experience itself.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll ever have ways to explain experience, and I think that's why it's so important. Like what we're doing right now is just expressing things that we've been through. Hopefully, somebody else picks it up, like I said, and relates to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree.
All right. Well, it was nice talking with you.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm gonna stop
Stop.